Tawfik there in New York. Now I want to turn to China because the country's former premier Li Peng has died. He was 90 years old. Now Li was very much at the heart of Chinese politics throughout much of the 1980s and the 1990s, holding several different top positions. But he was potentially best known as the Butcher of Beijing for his role in the Tiananmen Square crackdown on pro-democracy protesters in 1989. Soldiers, of course, then killed hundreds of unarmed civilians. Estimates differ as to the number of the death toll, ranging from several hundred to several thousand. This is how Li's death was covered on Chinese state television.
Comrade Li Peng had a clear-cut banner, and together with most of the comrades of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee, took decisive measures to stop the unrest and quell the counter-revolutionary riots. It stabilized the domestic situation and played an important role in the major struggle for the future of the party and the country.
Well, China has, of course, consistently censored Tiananmen Square massacre, any stories about it. It avoids making any reference to it. Outside of China, however, Li's foreign appearances attracted huge demonstrations, and Michael Bristow has more on those.
He became almost the face of the official crackdown. A few weeks beforehand, he went on television in China. He declared martial law, which was an indication of what was to come. And he was then part of a group of people that decided to send in the troops. Later on, in subsequent years, he justified his actions, saying China had to do that in order to restore order to Beijing, which was in a chaotic situation. So really, he was the face of that crackdown, even though he wasn't necessarily the person who actually decided to send in the troops and the tanks. The Chinese political system is quite opaque, and so we're never quite clear who it is who's made the exact decision to do what, but certainly he was the public face.
Now, no mention of Tiananmen Square in China's national English newspaper, the Global Times. Instead, it lists lots of various different achievements of Li Peng's, and notably how he implemented the one country, two systems policy and also led the work of returning Hong Kong and Macau to the motherland. On that last point, Li's death comes at a time of very high tensions in Hong Kong, where, of course, we saw violent protests over an extradition bill. They've been testing Beijing's authority in the Chinese-controlled territory. Let's speak to Kerry Allen from BBC Monitoring, who's monitoring all the events for us. So when it comes to Li Peng's death, how has Chinese media been covering this?
Well, it's past midnight now in China, so a lot of newspapers are starting to come, their front pages are starting to be published. And literally today, I mean the 24th of June, there's front pages just absolutely dominated by pictures of Li Peng, calling him Comrade Li, and publishing this obituary of him that was originally published by the Xinhua news agency. And they're very, very closely sticking to these words, because anything like this, a very, very senior figure dying, the state wants to make sure that the wording is absolutely spot on, that there's no room for any kind of possibilities where people could unpick the words and say that one paper has said this, and they've tried to get messages out. And the same is very much the case on social media, that users were posting when his death was announced. But I mean, I was clicking on Sina Weibo, which is the equivalent of Facebook or Twitter, and you couldn't see any of these posts, because what will happen is the government will be going through them, screening them, checking they're in line with what the government wants to get across, that he was a very great man. I mean, the Xinhua news agency calling him a loyal communist warrior, and also it gives you an opportunity for Beijing's pro-government sponsors, people who are paid by the government, to post their messages. So lots of hearts appearing on social media, lots of people saying that he was a great man. You won't see any criticism whatsoever in China today about Li Peng dying whatsoever.
So, Kerry, given that yesterday, or this time 12 hours ago or so, we were talking about state media or Chinese media actually talking about the protests taking place in Hong Kong, it seemed like they were opening up a little bit and marking those. When it comes to Tiananmen Square, given that Li Peng was described as the Butcher of Beijing, nothing at all, no mention at all of that. Briefly, if you would.
No, not really, no. South China Morning Post, an independent paper in Hong Kong, has commented on how he was a controversial figure. But no, the censors are very, very very, very careful about any mention whatsoever of officials who've died, and they don't have a presence like on Facebook or Twitter like officials over here do. So yeah, any kind of mention of any official whatsoever is under tight scrutiny from Beijing.
OK, Kerry Allen from BBC Monitoring, thanks for looking into that for us. Many thanks for coming.